What's up guys, I'm Lizzie. Maybe you're a beginner, or maybe you're self-taught, or just maybe nobody's taught you. And maybe you want to train a horse how to ride, but you don't want to ride out a bunch of bucks. And you want to do it in a way that your horse enjoys it because you want to be able to have a relationship with your horse and not have them soured to you. And maybe you've seen it before where somebody's breaking in a colt or a new horse or something and it's just messy, the horse doesn't look ready and it's dangerous, and maybe somebody says the horse needs more groundwork. So what does more groundwork mean? What do you do when a horse needs more groundwork? What are things that you can do that will improve your relationship and your ability to be able to ride safely your first try? What kind of groundwork can you do that'll build your relationship with your horse, create a more safe horse, and create a better experience for your first ride? So here are 5 groundwork things you can train your horse before training them how to ride. In my opinion, using harsh equipment and forceful methods of training is lazy and ignorant. There's always an alternative way of teaching the horse that does not require pain or force. And sometimes it's ignorance and other times it's laziness. Because if you're just trying to get good results as fast as you can, that's laziness. But if you're having some sort of ongoing issue and you just choose to use harsh equipment to cover that up, that's ignorance. A lot of the times, an ongoing behavioral issue is pain related. And a lot of the times you see people saying, no, it's not pain because I had the chiropractor out and I had the vet out and they cleared her for pain. But a lot of the times there are pain issues going on that maybe the vet and maybe the chiropractor cannot see because it's being created as you're riding the horse. And yes, it is also possible that you have a chiropractor, a vet, or even a saddle fitter that is overlooking an issue that they are ignorant to. So if your horse is having an ongoing issue like their head going up in the air whenever you run or whatever you do, then that's usually pain related, and it's probably saddle pain related, or it could be mouth pain related to your bit, whatever. A lot of the times your tack, the way you ride, could easily be causing your horse's ill behavior. And so adding more painful tack like tie downs and harsh bits is not going to fix the issue, it's going to cover it up. And that's why that is ignorance. Because if you really cared to fix the real cause of the issue, you would do a bunch of your own research and find out pretty quickly that your horse's symptoms are not naughty, bad behavior, because never in the history of ever has there been a horse that has just intentionally been bad and has had weird, mean quirks that are just annoying that you have to cover up with mean equipment because they just want to be. The horse always has some sort of reasoning, whether it's pain or fear. Those are the 2 most common reasons for bad behavior. And usually it's both, because when a horse has a saddle or some sort of tack that is causing them pain, it'll make them more anxious and uptight because their whole body is restricted. Or if a horse is nervous, then it'll make their tack not fit right because they'll be holding themselves in a more tense, uptight manner. So the 2 kind of go hand in hand. So if you want a well-behaving horse, you have to have a healthy, relaxed horse that has well-fitting tack, and you have to trust your gut. You have to listen to your horse, and you have to take some accountability because you can't just rely on your vet and your chiropractor to tell you that your horse is not in pain, they're just being bad. Because if somebody tells you that, immediately scratch them and get somebody new, because that is not a good answer, that is not helpful, and that is not going to fix your issues to tell somebody that their horse is just being bad. Yes, there are learned behaviors that horses will do that we train them to do unintentionally that can be annoying or dangerous to us, but we train them to do that. They are learned mannerisms. Every interaction they have with a human, they're learning and being trained. But to get back to what we were supposed to be talking about and why I went down that rabbit hole is because groundwork is very important and is a step that a lot of people overlook and leaves a hole in your training so that you have to cover it up with painful equipment and harsh training methods. If you cover the groundwork basics super well and you have a very well-mannered, responsive horse on the ground, chances are your first ride is going to go so smoothly. And the reasons we do groundwork is to build trust, respect, a relationship, and good mannerisms. We're training the horse to pressure and release, and we're desensitizing them to scary objects. Now, obviously, with this video, we're just going to scrape the surface with the groundwork you can and should do with your horse, because there is a whole long list of other groundwork things that can be and should be done before you start riding. But I'm just gonna go over 5 groundwork games that you can teach your horse so that you can improve your relationship with them and be able to be around them safely, because you'll be able to move them around easily by light pressure. If you need to, move their hindquarters over, boop, good girl. Or if we need them to back up a little bit, boop, They know how to back up. And all of this will help us immensely under saddle. Once you have these things figured out on the ground, once you have the ability to be able to put a little bit of pressure on the halter and have your horse move backwards, that will apply on the saddle too. We'll have everything figured out on the ground before we get on the back, so we don't have big explosions and disasters and pain and broken limbs and a messed up horse and a funny video you can post on TikTok. So let's get on with the groundwork. Now, the things I'm gonna go over might seem too simple to you, but they are extremely important, and maybe somebody doesn't know this, or maybe somebody doesn't know that this needs to be taught on the ground. But we're gonna go over head to the knee, releasing the hindquarters, side passing, backing up, and the crab walk. So number one, very important. I saw a video recently of a young girl trying to break in a young horse, and as she was trying to get on the saddle, that's when she was trying to teach the horse the head to the knee. She was yanking on the horse's face. It was ugly, the horse was not having it, and it was very dangerous looking. It's just not a smart way to start the process. You don't want to be training the horse to anything new when you are training them to accept you on their back. When you are training them to be under saddle, that is what you were training them. You shouldn't be trying to teach them to bring their head to their side or to back up or to move around. The only thing that you were training them at that moment is to be able to sit on their back. Because if you try to force a ton of information on your horse while they're also being freaked out because you're being on their back, you're just asking for a disaster. They're not accepting new knowledge and they're not retaining information when they are under stress and fear and under freeze and lockdown mode. So it's super important to be able to train this and have this down to a T before being on their back. And I'm sure you've seen this before, and maybe you haven't, so we're going to go over it nice and clearly. But bringing your horse's head to their side, which would be bringing their horse's head to your knee if you were on their back, is to just pick up on the rein, and you're just going to sit here with a slight amount of pressure. Now, a lot of times, most of the times, people, when they do this, they'll put all of the pressure on the rein and force the horse's head to their side, but that is not really the goal for me. The reason it's smart and safe to train your horse to bring their head to their side is because they can't easily run off or balk or rear if their head is to their side. But it's also very important to recognize that if their ear and their eyes and their whole attention is looking at you, that's how you know that they're being present and not staring or freaking out about something else. So when you bring your horse's head to their side, you want them to willingly bring their head to their side and not be forced to do it, because if they're forced to do it, they're not doing it willingly, for one, which means that they're not paying attention to you, to the pressure, they're not releasing, and they are still freaking out about something. So if they are willingly bringing their head to your side with just the smallest amount of pressure, which is the smallest amount of ask, and they willingly give you their head, and they look at you and they give you their ear, that means they're paying attention to you, they are present, they are aware of the pressure, and they are responding to very soft touch. So how to train that, we stand at their side, and then we pick up the lead line and we just put the smallest amount of pressure on it. Very good. And we're looking for an ear twitch, even their eye. If their eye, they look the direction that they're thinking, and their ears go the directions that they're thinking. So we want some sort of response to the pressure. If they give their head just the slightest amount, we want them to know that that is the correct thing. So releasing pressure lets them know that that was the right thing. Okay. So the lighter pressure you use and the quicker your release response is, the more light and responsive your horse will be. And now I want to go over releasing the hindquarters. And this is really important to learn before you're on the saddle. It's really important to know when you're under saddle, and it's just great to know all around for your safety, the horse's safety, and everybody that is involved. How do we train our horse to release their hindquarters, and what does it even mean? Basically, releasing the hindquarters, you're able to put a small amount of pressure on your horse's rear end, and they move their hind end over. Ideally, you want the back legs to cross over, so they're completely releasing the hind end, because if they're not fully crossing over, then there's a little bit of built up tension in there and they're not fully releasing. And of course, you want to teach this on both sides. So it's helpful to have something like a carrot stick, a whip, even a crop. You could even just use the end of your lead line rope if you wanted to, but it's nice to have an extension of the arm that you can reach out and just tap the hind end. And you want them to stand still with their front feet, and we're just asking them to move their back end. So I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on her front so that she doesn't walk forward, and I'm just going to tap on the back end. I'm going to tap. Good. Until she does what I want. Then I'll release. We also want to be able to teach them to respond to our hand pressure, because obviously we want them to be able to respond if we don't have a whip or a crop or whatever. So we'll just put light pressure with our hand, and we'll put some pressure on the rein, and we'll just push a little bit until we get release. And we just keep training this until they know and can move off the slightest pressure. Good. Good. And next, I want to go over side passing. And again, basically, we're just training the horse to move off of pressure. Side passing is a little bit more complicated because you're moving both the front and the back end, ideally at the same time, but we're not going to expect that right away. And this is easiest to train along a fence or gate. And since my arena doesn't have fencing right now, we're just going to use the bent gate as our guide. So we already taught them how to release the hindquarters, but we haven't taught them how to release their front end and be able to cross their front legs over. So ideally, we want them to be able to know that before side passing. So basically what we practice with the hind end, we want to teach them with the front end before we teach them side passing. Basically, we're just going to do the same thing that we did with the hindquarters, but we're just going to start very lightly, and we're just going to start with the head. We're not even going to apply physical pressure. We're just going to have pressure in the air. So we're just going to swing this. Good. And as soon as we get a response that we want, we release the pressure. And pressure doesn't have to be touching, it's just there. So if I'm swinging this lightly at her face, she knows to move away from that, and I release pressure. I swing it lightly at her face. Good, she moves, and she even crossed her legs over that time. So we move her front, we move the back. Good. Move the front. Good. Move the back. Good. And we're not even asking for them to move together. We're not asking for the front and the back to work together right away, because it's hard for the horse to learn how to do that right away. So we're giving them the chance to learn it and then piece it together as a whole. And again, you want to teach them this on both sides. So we'll line her up on the fence. We'll move her face. Good. Move her face. Good. Move her face. Good. Move the back end. Good. Move her face. Very nice. And just practice this a lot. Make sure you give your horse a lot of release. Don't confuse them with asking for too many steps, and don't expect them to know how to do it right away, and just have a lot of grace and just have fun with it. Now we're gonna go over the backup, and the backup is extremely important and definitely should be taught on the ground. Now, teaching the backup properly is actually way more important than just teaching them how to back up. Having them be able to back up willingly and rock back and have their legs move in sync actually takes a lot of self-carriage and the ability to put their weight in their back end, which makes them lighter on their front end. It's going to help them be more round and again have more self-carriage. Forcing your horse backwards is going to usually make them stick their head up high and brace their front end and just kind of scooch backwards, where they are taking one step at a time and they are kind of reluctant and braced. So if you're looking for a way to teach your horse how to back up that is not that, we're just going to basically apply the same rules as before and just use the slightest amount of pressure, and as soon as you get the smallest amount of response, that's when you release pressure. So you're training your horse to rock back and then step. We're not teaching them to step back. We want to help and encourage them to put their weight on their back end and learn how to carry themselves properly so that they can walk backwards without feeling awkward, uncomfortable, and are able to do it properly. And a lot of the times your issues start with not being able to back up your horse. If you can't stop your horse while you're riding them, if they're not very responsive to pressure on the rein, it's usually because they don't have a great backup. And if your horse has a good backup, they have good brakes, and they have good light response on their halter, bridle, whatever you're using. So light pressure. Good. As soon as you get a rock back, you release pressure. Light pressure. Good. We get a rock back, we release. Light pressure. Good. And you see how every time I go and ask for a light pressure, she gives me more of a response. At first, it was a very, very small movement. And by the third time I was asking, she was clearly rocking back. So light pressure, and then she moves the foot. Now you have to expect this to take a while. It's not going to work immediately. You have to really work at this and be very patient with your horse. And once you're able to get a step back, we're going to only ask for 1 foot at a time until we get that down really well, and then you can start asking for a little bit more. I also like to teach my horse to be able to back up with pressure on the chest. So I just tap with my stick on the neck and she backs up. And that again is just, you're adding pressure, and once you get the correct result that you want or close to it, you release pressure. That's basically how you train a horse to do anything. If you put pressure on them in any amount of way and then they do something and you release, that's their sign that they did the right thing, and that's what they're gonna do next time. Tap on the chest, good. Very good. Oh, I put pressure on the rein. Very good. And the last one that might be my favorite is the crab walk. And I've gone over this several times before, but I'm gonna do it again because I can't say it enough. Now, the crab walk is basically having your horse bend a full circle around you in a way that makes them have to disengage their rib cage and have to release that tension. So when a horse is nervous, uptight, anxious, or whatever, they hold a lot of tension in their chest and they kind of stay really rigid and stiff. So when you have a horse bend around you like we are going to in the crab walk, that makes them have to disengage their rib cage fully to have a full bend, which makes them have to release some of that pent-up tension and air that they're holding on to. And I love to teach your horses this because it's something you can use when they are nervous or uptight, because it helps them relax and it helps them be able to bend, which is something that we all want our horses to be able to do, because when a horse bends properly, it helps to train them to have the proper posture and ability to hold themselves correctly. Because a horse that is uptight and restricted is a very tense horse that will probably be in pain soon, because nobody likes to be uptight and rigid. We all like to be able to be relaxed and have proper posture. And that's what the main goal for the horse is too. And that's why bending them is helpful. So how we do this is I'll stand probably at her shoulder like so, and I'm going to pick up the rein so I have contact on her face. I'm just going to put my hand up like this, and you can use the end of your rope, or right now I'm just going to use the carrot stick. I'm going to hold my rope up like this, and then I'm going to apply pressure to her hindquarters. And I'm going to ask her to go forward, and as soon as she takes a step forward, I'll release. Again, the release is the check mark that yes, you did that right. So we want to release as soon as we get something that we wanted. So again, I'll set at her shoulder, and I don't want her to move me around. I don't want to step away from her, and I don't want her coming into my space. So my arm is like the don't pass this point kind of thing, and my foot is not going to move. I'm just going to spin with her, but I'm not going to step away from her or anything. I'm going to hold my ground. So I'm going to put my hand up again. I'm going to be at her shoulder. I'm going to put pressure on her hindquarters, and I'm going to ask her to go forward. And because she already knows this, I'm going to ask for a full bend so you can see what I'm talking about. So I want her to go forward. Very good. So here's what you want to look for to know that you have the proper bend in your horse. When you are having them bend around you, you want their inside back leg to cross over their outside back leg, like that, as they're walking forward. So you want this leg to be following this leg. You want their inside back leg to be following their outside front leg. So you want this leg to cross underneath themselves and reach across to this front outside leg, and you want this front outside leg to be coming in front of themselves. So you don't want their shoulder to be falling out, because we've talked about the falling out shoulder before, and that is a stiff, rigid horse that doesn't want to bend. So we want their outside front leg to be coming in front of themselves. We don't want their front outside leg to be going out. We want it to be going around. So when I ask Stella to bend again, I want her front outside leg to reach in front of her inside one. There, that was nice. And it can be hard to tell if they're doing it right at first. It can take a little bit of practice to know what you're seeing, but really we want their whole top line to bend nicely. We don't want any ridges. We don't want their head to be just bending or their neck to just be bending like this. We want a full soft bend through their whole body. We want their spine to bend. We want their neck to bend. We want their head to bend. We don't want their head to just turn in and their outside shoulder to fall out. We want a full bend, and that'll be super beneficial for your horse to know and for you to know. And once you're able to be in the saddle, you can start practicing that on the saddle around a barrel or a pole or something and achieve the same roundness, so that if you are on a trail ride or something scary happens, or if your horse has a lot of tension, it's a great way to diffuse their tension and to be able to help them relax and get a lick and chew and sigh of relief. We're just helping them chill out. It's a great tool all around to have, and I highly encourage you to practice this with your horse. But that's it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give a big like and subscribe. I post new videos every single Sunday, so don't forget to come back next week. You can go follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll see you guys next week, Sunday. Okay, bye. Good girl.